Hi, good evening. Welcome to this first pilot program. I just first of all just like to take a second to thank everybody for giving me great feedback on Facebook when I put the call out to see what the community really wanted young black men who are under the age of 21 to learn that we typically don't think that the schools are teaching, or that they typically don't learn until later on in life after they have had certain struggles and certain hardships, and may have made some mistakes that they can't come back from or have a hard time coming back from, and they may lose heart and miss out on a lot of opportunities. So there was a long list of things that we could talk about, and I really appreciate everybody just pouring out their heart, and hopefully we'll get the opportunity to get to all of those. I just wanted to take this particular opportunity to put together a pilot. So just something to just give it a shot to see how it goes and to build on it from there. So the whole purpose of this is to give you something with some content in it, and to get feedback from the community to see what kind of value we'll be bringing by doing these lessons. And hopefully we can just continue to build on these lessons and create new lessons and build an entire curriculum and just really work together to make the community better and to really resolve some issues. If you know me, you know that I definitely have a heart for young people, a heart for young men especially. I get a lot of phone calls, text messages, inboxes and things from young men as well as from their parents. A lot of parents come to me and say, hey, my son is going through this. Can you talk to him? Or my son is having a hard time. Can you talk to him? And God knows I love to do that. I love to be able to help out. I love to be able to share knowledge with the young guys. But at the same time, I'm only one person. So I've always looked for what will be a way that I could not only help other people and help young men and help parents and preachers and teachers and other stakeholders in the lives of young men, especially young African American men, and really be able to be kind of in more than one place at once. So I think this is a good opportunity for me to really give that a shot to see what we can develop as a community and put together to really be an asset to the community. So out of all of the things that we got on the Facebook page, I was really happy to see all of the items that were presented, and I really appreciate everybody for putting in on it. If you think about something later on, feel free to inbox me or just hit me up on Facebook, and we'll see what we can do about putting some more stuff together. I created a list out of all of it, and I'm going to try to build around that list to make sure that we touch the things that are really most important to your hearts and the hearts of the young men that you love, that you sow into, that you pray for. So tonight I wanted to start with something really simple, and this will be part one of a four-part series, and it's going to be based on fulfillment and how are we fulfilled and how do we find fulfillment. One thing about all of us as human beings, not just young men, but especially young men, is most of us are doing things, whether it be work, our jobs, whether it be relationships, whether it be our participation in the community, or whatever we may be doing in life, all the things we're doing in life. And what happens is a lot of times we are not fulfilled in doing those things. We go to work every day and it's just to get a paycheck. We don't enjoy what we do. We don't really enjoy the people that we work with. Even in our community, we do things, but we don't do things that really fulfill us because we don't know what fulfills us. So what I wanted to talk about in this particular lesson, this first pilot lesson, was fulfillment. How do we find fulfillment in everything that we do in life? What is going to set us on that path to fulfillment? And I don't believe that in this life we'll be 100% fulfilled, because I think that the earth is broken, the world is broken, human beings are broken. But I do believe that there are certain aspects that we can find, that we can put into our own lives and make sure that we are moving toward our fulfillment, and make sure that we're making decisions, that we're getting into relationships that move us toward fulfillment, that we choose jobs that move us toward fulfillment, that when we get ready to go to college, that we choose majors that move us toward fulfillment, to where we can look at every aspect of our lives and really move toward fulfillment in those things. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started on that. So the first thing we want to keep in mind is I just want to give you congratulations, because if you are listening to this, if you're willing to participate, if you are alive right now, then you have already won the life lottery. We know all the things that go into making a baby. We know the sperm, the egg. We know the percentages of those that fail. We know that there's millions of sperm cells all vying for one egg, and only one egg and one sperm cell typically come together to create a baby. So if we're here, then that means that we have already won a race. We have already shown that we are more than conquerors, that there's already a purpose and a design for our lives. So just give yourselves a hand, a round of applause, or whatever you want to do. And let me just say congratulations to you, because you are already a step ahead of millions of others. I like to just tell the story of Anansi. This spider is from an African proverb, and Anansi is a trickster in African storytelling. And Anansi was a spider who lived alone. Well, actually, he lived with his wife, but Anansi was kind of lazy. And one day, Anansi was out, and his friend Rabbit. He stopped by his friend Rabbit's house, and Rabbit was cooking a pot of beans. Anansi knew that if he stayed too long, Rabbit was going to make him start working on something. So what he did was he said, Rabbit, you know what, I'd love to have some of your beans. And Rabbit said, you know, I would love for you to have some of my beans. And Anansi said, but I got to go. I'm not going to be able to stay here. And he said, so I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll spin a web, and I'll attach one end of the web to your pot. I'll attach one end of the web to one of my legs, and I'll go ahead and do my business elsewhere. And when you're done, just pull on that web. Just pull that web on my leg, and I'll know to come back and get the food. And Rabbit said, you know what, Anansi, I think that's an excellent idea. I'm going to do that. Go ahead and take care of whatever you have to take care of, and I'll just pull the web when it's done. So Rabbit goes on and goes to his next friend Monkey's house, and Monkey is cooking yams and honey. And Anansi loves yams and honey. So he says, you know what, Monkey, I would love to stay here and have some of those yams and honey with you. And Monkey says, you know what, I would love for you to stay. Why don't you just stay? And Anansi says, nah, I think I got some other stuff to do. But I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll sew a web, and I'll attach one end to your pot of yams and honey, and I'll attach one end to my leg. And once you're done, you just tug on my leg, and I'll come back and share the food with you. Monkey said, okay, cool, brother. That's a great idea. And Anansi leaves. So then Anansi comes across his friend Leopard. And Leopard has a pot of greens, collard greens, whatever kind of greens. And Anansi said, man, you know what? That pot of greens smells really great. And Leopard said, you know what, man? You might as well just stay with me and have some of these greens. And Anansi said, no, brother. I got to go. I got work I have to do. But I tell you what I'll do. I'm going to spin this web. I'm going to put one end on your pot. I'm going to put one end on one of my legs. And I'm going to go ahead and do my work. And then I'll come back when you pull on the web. And Leopard said, man, you know what? That's a brilliant idea. I'll do that, man. Go ahead about your business. And I'll pull the web when I'm done. So Anansi goes on through his friends, and he does this until all 8 legs are attached to a web. Anansi starts to go down to the river, and all of a sudden he gets that first pull. And Rabbit's pot is done. Anansi is happy. But what happens is, all of a sudden he gets that second pull, and Monkey is pulling now. So Monkey is pulling on his leg. Then Leopard starts pulling, and before Anansi knows it, all 8 of his legs are being stretched out. He's almost breaking because of all of the tension that's being pulled. He's being pulled in 8 different directions, and it's almost pulling him apart. So he dives in the water and washes all the webs off, and hopefully he learned a lesson, but we don't know. Anansi is a trickster, and tricksters rarely ever learn their lessons in folk tales, whether they're African folk tales or any other folk tale. But the reason that I tell that story is because this is the story of a life without fulfillment. Anytime you're living a life without fulfillment, you'll find yourself being pulled in any number of different directions. You'll be all over the place, and it'll almost kill you. It'll almost pull you apart emotionally, physically, spiritually. And what we want to do tonight when we're talking about fulfillment is really pay attention to, where are your legs? What kind of things are you attached to that are not fulfilling your purpose, that are not giving you fulfillment in life? What kind of people are you attached to? What have you attached your legs to, and where are they pulling you? And hopefully what I can do is I can kind of give you some ideas on how to really be able to pick and choose better what things you attach yourself to. So tonight, or in this particular lesson, what I want to talk about is gifts. What am I good at? The first step in all of this stuff comes from what are we really good at? And that's the first thing we need to figure out when we're talking about fulfillment, when we're talking about how we're going to be fulfilled. So what am I good at? What do I really do well that I do better than other people, that I do better than a lot of other people? Am I really special? And that's one of the things that we really have to ask ourselves, because in culture, what we hear a lot is, well, if everybody's special, then no one really is. And I don't think I 100% agree with that. I push back on that a little bit, because what I believe is, I do believe that every single individual is special. But I think the issue that we run into is that we don't understand, number one, we don't understand what makes us special. But then number two, not everybody who's special is walking in their particular gifts and talents, or is even willing to work either way, whether they know they have their gifts and talents or they don't work toward their gifts and talents. So now even the people, even though we're all special, there's only a certain select few of us who understand the concept of gifts and talents, and who are willing to do the work to maximize our gifts and talents in our lives and in the lives of other people. So now, what are we talking about when we say gifts and talents? How do these things make us special? So let's start with gifts. So the primary idea of a gift, of gifts, are that these are exceptional abilities or skills or background granted at birth. And what I mean by that is, as soon as you're born, you have already had something put into you that makes you stand out as far as your ability or your skills or your background. So some people are just born with gifts of numbers. They just see mathematics differently than everybody else. I remember when I was in college, one of my good friends, a brother named Rohan, peace to the homie Rohan, Rohan was really brilliant at everything that had to do with numbers. And we were majoring in electrical engineering together, and the classes that he, I, and some of my other friends, we used to take classes as a group. And one thing that I noticed, and that we noticed really quickly, was that Rohan had an ability to see the numbers totally different than we did. We would study all night and try to cram all of this stuff in our brains and reread and read and reread and reread all of the stuff and work through issues, work through problems. And it'd take all night for us to just get a small concept. Rohan could open the book and look at it and be able to teach it immediately. And I remember sitting in classes with Rohan where Rohan would correct the professor. The professor would be working out a problem, and Rohan would say, "Hey, Chad, he did it that way, but it's a real easy way if you would just do it this, and this." And that's what I mean when I'm talking about gifts, where you have exceptional abilities. There's just certain things that you see differently, certain things that you're able to do differently. Some people are born in a family full of musicians. Even in my own family, I have a lot of cousins and that are musicians, that are musically inclined. And it has run down through generations. And this is something that they just have. They're able to hear certain things and make certain sounds and control their voices in a certain way that I can't do. Even if I worked really, really hard, I wouldn't be able to duplicate some of the things that some of them do. You may be born rich. You may be born to parents who are politicians. There are any number of things that give you a level of exceptionalism that makes you stand out, that gives you kind of a head start versus everybody else in the world. And these things are gifts. You didn't work for them. You didn't earn them. They're just granted to you at birth. So there's two different kinds of gifts that we want to look at. So the first gift is a natural gift. Natural gifts are granted for use in working in and enjoying God's beauty in the world for all people. So these are gifts that God gives to people just so that you can express his goodness and his beauty in the world amongst other people. And also so that you can be occupied, so that you can have an occupation. We know that in the scripture, one of the first things that God gave Adam was an occupation. He built the garden, and then he told Adam, look, you manage this, you run this, you make sure it works well. So he had the gift of management obviously, if God put him in charge of that. So he gives them to give him the gift of management to work in the garden. But not only that, but to be able to enjoy all that God created. Whether you are talking about carpentry, or you're talking about, again, engineering, or being good with mathematics, or being good with the sciences, or maybe even writing poetry, or writing rhymes, or drawing, or any number of these things, to where you are really expressing the creative power of who God is. This is something that you've been given, and that you may very well be able to make money off of. But it just really expresses God's beauty and his glory in the earth. And it's a gift that's given to you. It's something that you excel at that not necessarily everybody does. So that's a natural gift. So now, what are we talking about when we say spiritual gifts? So spiritual gifts are gifts given at salvation for the expansion of God's kingdom. So being Christian, what I believe the scriptures, and the scripture goes through any number of gifts that we're granted at salvation in order to, for the specific reason of expanding God's kingdom in the world. So these are gifts like the gift of prophecy, the gift of healing, the gift of discernment, the spiritual gifts, and there's a whole litany or list of them, and I didn't want to go through every single one because I like to keep these videos rather brief. But if you go to Romans chapter 12, verses 6 through 8, 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 4 through 11, and 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 28, what you get is an overview of what these gifts are and how they can be applied to the kingdom. All of these gifts, and when I say the kingdom, I'm talking about the glory of God in the earth, and the expression of God's goodness and his power in the earth, and the church, and the church's ability to carry that out and to express that. And even in the church, we don't really understand what our gifts are. Most of us don't understand which gifts we have. How do we apply these gifts? What's the great way to use it? And oftentimes we find ourselves going to church and kind of getting lost in the shuffle because we don't necessarily know what we're supposed to bring to the table. So there is a natural aspect of it, but there's also a spiritual aspect of it. But either way, we're talking about these gifts that are granted to us, that are given to us for a specific purpose, and so that we can fulfill that. And the thing that we know is that once we realize what these gifts are, now we can begin to manage our relationships, or manage our jobs, or our job search, or what we're going to do when we're in school, or what we're going to do in college. We can begin to manage these things, because the entire purpose of this is to make sure that we not only recognize our gifts, but we start to choose things that push us in the direction of our gifts, because our gifts are a hint to what we should be doing in the world. So if I realize that I'm exceptional at mathematics, then some of the places that I might want to go into is I might want to go into engineering, or I might want to go into accounting or finance, or any of these things when I major in college. It may not be a good idea for me to go to college and major in philosophy, because I may find that I'm not gifted at philosophy, and it becomes way more work than is necessary. And then I may also find down the road that I don't necessarily love being a philosopher. And this is one of the things that actually happened to me, because I didn't understand that I wasn't necessarily gifted at math. Math was more of a talent for me. And I'll go into that after this, but math was more of a talent for me than a gift. I wasn't like Rohan. I couldn't just look at a bunch of numbers and see it way different than everybody else. But because it was a talent, I was able to develop it and do well at it. And in some cases, some would say exceptionally well, because I was able to get an electrical engineering degree. But at the same time, this is what caused me to not want to be an engineer when I got out of school, because I wasn't gifted at it. It took way more work than I wanted to exert on a regular day to be an engineer. And I didn't love it. I wasn't passionate about it at all. So I had to come out of that and move more towards something that I felt like I was gifted in. And this is a part of that, and even my occupation now, clinical research, is a part of that. But I'm still pushing toward maximizing what I know are my gifts. And I won't go into my gifts because we don't want to talk about me all night. But the most important thing is to make sure that you start to recognize your gifts, that you start to ask questions on how do you figure out your gifts, and start to move your life toward those gifts. Because if God gifted you with these things, then he's also giving you a purpose in how to apply them. Now let's have a look at talents. I mentioned talents, and talents are different from gifts. In the primary way, they're similar and they're different. They're similar in that we're still talking about abilities and skills. But when we talk about talents, we're talking about ability or skill that can be learned and improved, but does not come naturally. And I brought up mathematics for myself because I was good at math, but I was good at math because I worked so hard at it. It was a challenge for me. It wasn't just something that I woke up one day and I was able to solve long division problems really quickly, or I knew how to find a derivative just by looking at the calculus problem, or I just thought about mathematics all day and walked around with math books and read them simply because I love the numbers. That wasn't the case for me. For me, I had to really spend the time. I had to go and get tutored. I had to stay after class just to make sure that I could do well on the exams, just to make sure that I could at least be average in the class. So that was a hint, or should have been a hint to me, that this is not a gift. This is a talent, and I need to move more toward my gifts. And so I would say the same thing for you and for any young man that you want to teach or any young man that you want to sow into. Make sure that they understand their gifts and what a gift is, but also make sure that they understand what a talent is. Because a talent is something you should mostly pursue if you have a passion. And a passion is a longing or a suffering, a strong feeling, a strong emotional attachment to something. So it's not like you should necessarily avoid talents, but you should make sure that if you have a talent and you're developing a talent, make sure it's something that you enjoy. Make sure it's something that you love, or something that you know that once you get this, you'll be able to fill a need in the community, or fill a need in your family, or fill a need in your own life. Because this is something that most likely is not going to come easy to you, and it's going to require a lot of time. It's going to require a lot of resources. And it's going to require a lot of work. So make sure that as you begin to develop talents, that you understand that this is what you're going to have to put into it. So these are the difference between gifts and talents. But together, once you put them together, once you take the things that you are naturally able to excel at, things that you understand that in a way that not many people do, things that you just look at it and you just see it, whether it be arts or sciences or math or poetry or writing books or writing screenplays, or any number of things. There's literally an infinite number of gifts that God has put out there for people. But once you understand what your gifts are, what you're gifted at, and understand talents are just things that you enjoy, but it takes you a lot of work to get into. It takes you a lot of work to really develop that skill. It doesn't come as easy to you as a gift does. Once you understand what your gifts and talents are, now that helps you make decisions. Again, it helps you make decisions on the people that you associate with. You want to be around people that are feeding your gifts and feeding your talents, that are strengthening you and building you up. These are the type of people that you want to spend most of your time around, because these are the people that are going to help you grow. When you start to look for elders and people that you want to mentor, to mentor you, that's another thing that you want to make sure. Do these people nurture your gifts and your talents? Or are they trying to push you in a direction that don't really nurture your gifts, but at the same time, it's not a talent that you want to develop, you're not interested in? And also in school and work, find jobs that you really excel at. Try to. Of course, we don't always just get to pick and choose which jobs we want, which occupations we want, who are going to be our neighbors and things of that nature. But as far as you can choose these things for yourself, go ahead and try to build these things around your gifts and your talents so that you're becoming a fulfilled and well-rounded person. And we'll talk about some of the other ideas on being fulfilled in additional lessons. So the final thing is to test and see. So the thing about gifts and talents is, especially as black people, especially as young black men, we typically don't have as many opportunities as some other people. but you also aren't adjusted to looking for opportunities. So make sure that you're trying different things. Make sure that you try math. Make sure that you try science. When you're in school, make sure that you really give all of the subjects that are presented to you a fair shot. Go ahead and try it. Work hard, because you never know. This may be the thing that you're gifted at. This may be a talent that you can develop, that you will enjoy, that you will help your community with, that'll help you enjoy life. So try as many things as you want. Don't let anything that's not dangerous or anything that's not going to lead you down the wrong path not be something that you're willing to give a try. Yeah, you may like basketball, we might like football, but what about lacrosse? Have you ever tried lacrosse? You don't know. You might be gifted at lacrosse and get a full ride scholarship, or become a professional lacrosse player, or go down to somebody who may own horses, or a horse ranch, or go play golf or soccer, or go to the debate club and see what the debate club is talking about, because this may be something that you're gifted at, or it may be something that you would like to develop a talent in that'll really be fulfilling for the rest of your life. So some other resources that I just wanted to throw up here. One is the Gallup Strength Center, and this is something that I do recommend. This is something I did at my job as a clinical researcher, and I really feel like it really opened up my eyes to some of the gifts and the talents and the strengths that I have. If you go to this website, you'll be able to find the tests that you can take, and they're usually not that expensive, maybe about $20, depending on how much detail and information you want. But I would definitely suggest checking stuff like this out, because it really gives you an idea of what's inside of you. Another one is the Discover Your Spiritual Gifts PDF from Lifeway. And these are for spiritual gifts. So it helps you kind of develop and understand what your spiritual gifts are. And then there's 123test.com, the DISC personality test. Now, I haven't necessarily taken this one, but this is one somebody else recommended to me. And there are any number of these out there. Some are better, some are worse. If you have any questions on them and you just want to reach out to me and get my thoughts on them, or I can reach out to somebody else and get their thoughts on them for you, just inbox me or shoot me a quick email. Either way, the point is to test and see. The point is to test things and see if this may be something that may be a blessing to you and your way to bless somebody else. And we just want to make sure that we give ourselves the opportunities to know what our gifts and talents are. So that was our first step on the journey. We talked about being born. We talked about how we want a race, how we're already exceptional because we're born. But in order to be really exceptional, we need to understand what are we good at. We need to understand what our gifts and talents are. And in order to understand our gifts and talents, we need to test and see what things we excel at and what things we enjoy enough that we want to spend the time to develop those things as talents to be a blessing to ourselves and to our community. I like to just end with a quick story. Shaquille O'Neal is he definitely will go down as one of the best basketball players or most valuable basketball players to his team in the history of the NBA. And I like to use Shaquille O'Neal as an example because he is a clear example of both gifts and talents. When Shaquille O'Neal first came into the league out of LSU and came to play for the Orlando Magic in the NBA, he was a dominant player. He was still dominant, but you could see that he was all power. Shaquille O'Neal was 7'3", 340 pounds. Excuse me. So he was already exceptionally a big human being. He was bigger than most human beings we've ever met, that we've ever seen, we've ever heard stories about. He was huge. So this was a gift for Shaquille O'Neal. Not too many people are 7'3", 340 whatever pounds, 320 whatever pounds, however much he weighed. But at the same time, this was not something that he worked for. He didn't earn it. He didn't, pray, God, let me just be super tall or eat certain foods and it made him grow faster than everybody else. This is not what happened. This was a gift that he had that made him able to excel at basketball. But when he came into the league, he didn't have a lot of footwork. And if you play basketball, you know about basketball, playing in the post, especially footwork is very necessary. But he didn't need footwork at that time because he would just get the ball and just dunk on people. Remember when he first came in, he was breaking backboards and all that type stuff. So as he continued his career, especially when he got to the Lakers, he got way better. And he got way better because he started to work on his footwork. He started working on hook shots. He started working on head fakes. He started working on spin moves and things of that nature, to where now he had his gift, but he was also developing talents because he wasn't born with that footwork. Again, when he came into the league, he didn't have the footwork. He didn't have the spin moves. He didn't have the jump hooks. But when he got to LA, he blossomed because he started to work on his talents. He started to work on those things that were hard work for him, that took some development, that didn't come natural. Some of the things that he required the time and the work and the effort to build on. And by the end of his career, Shaquille O'Neal was the most dominant player in the NBA because not only did he have his gift, 7'3", 300 and whatever pounds, but he had also maximized his talents, his footwork, his head fakes, his spin moves, his jump hooks. And that's what I want to leave you with, is that identify your gifts, but also develop your talents. Make sure that you have your gifts and your talents working together, and you will figure out that you can be great, that you are already great, but you can live an exceptional, fulfilled life for yourself, for your loved ones, for your community, and you can be a blessing to all of us. I enjoyed it. Stay tuned for the next lesson. Peace.